Welcome everybody, this is Ray of RebelEars.com. Want to thank everybody who's listening to the podcast on anchor.fm/RebelEars, everybody who's watching the YouTube channel. And today we're going to be talking about three things: writer's block, collaborations, and one of my favorite producers, Ace Taylor 1. So that's his IG, ACETAYLOR, and the number 1. So we're going to start off with writer's block. So as an artist, or even a producer, you always feel like, you're at that standstill where you don't know what you need to do next. So this is what I would tell the artists, start getting more comfortable with freestyling. The reason why I say that, it opens your mind to like what you can do next. So sometimes you just need to look around what's going on, or even around you. So you might be talking about like, okay, if you're in a session, if you're writing, right? Okay, good example with Outkast Aquemini. With Andre 3000 part, right? He was talking about how him and Big Boy was writing Marta. He was looking at the fans above him, write his next track. And something as simple as that made a hit, right? So you got to think of it this way. What limits you from, feeling like, oh man, I don't know what to talk about? Talk about what you're doing right now. Like trying to figure out this next line. Got a lot on my mind. I just need to go ahead and take my time. Something as simple as that. That could be something that could be like a pinnacle, right? So you got to think of it that way. And what's next, right? Because what happens with writer's block, that in my opinion is an excuse, right? There might be something going on politically, something going on in your neighborhood, in your area, something in America, something that's going on to make you feel like insecure. It could even be something as big as the next event that's happening, right? Something big that you want to be a part of, a shout out, someone you want to work with. Like there's so many things that you got to think about that could separate you from having writer's block, right? Because, when I was an artist, I used to have writer's block too. And then I remember when I was in high school, this one person, I'm trying to remember who it was. I was writing lyrics and I kept getting writer's block. The only thing he told me, put your pad down. He actually wrote it in my notepad. He was like, spend 2 weeks straight freestyling. And that actually helped me out because now you could go into a cypher and you could be freestyling for hours. Like Juice WRLD, rest in peace Juice WRLD. He can freestyle for hours at a time, right? And you got to think of it this way. What's going to set you apart from everybody else? Because, everybody can freestyle. Well, let me fix that. Everybody can kind of freestyle, but to be talented, it takes time. It takes practice. It takes dedication, right? So you got to think of it this way. What can you do to set yourself apart from everybody else, right? What can you do to make yourself known, right? Especially if you write it, because like Juice WRLD, Young Thug, Lil Wayne, a lot of artists, Jay-Z, they don't write their music. They freestyle, right? It depends on you because Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, they write their music. And you just got to think of it this way. Is it going to help you out? Is it going to be beneficial? Or is it going to affect you? You should always practice different concepts to help you out to see exactly what's going to help you out in the long run. Because if you really want to make this into a career other than a hobby, you got to put practice. Like LeBron James. The reason he's one of the best in the NBA is because he practiced. Like not from when he was just 18. He been practicing, longer than 18. You got to learn the fundamentals. You got to learn like your weakness, your strength. You got to work on what you can. So with that being said, when it comes to writer's block, do the research. Like go on Google right now and look up what can help with writer's block, right? Because even with producers, like I tell producers all the time, if you have a part where you like stuck at, save that session, open it up next day and see if you could create something like totally different from when you started, right? Because even Henry told me like him and Ace Taylor, they produced so many tracks together. He told me like 80% of his productions are between him and Taylor. And that made me think, it's good to depend on yourself, but it's also good to work with other people around you to see what can help you to boost to get to the next level, especially if you're trying to make this a career. If it's a career, you can't just do it by yourself. You got to work with new people. You got to work with new artists. You got to work with new producers. You got to work with management. You got to make deadlines, because if you meeting deadlines, writer's block is not an excuse. You think Mike Will made it, 808 Mafia, Metro Boomin, Murder Beats had writer's block and they just like, you know what, I can't do it. No, they figure out what they have to do to stay creative. So to stay creative, you know, it sounds easy, but it's work, especially if you get paid for it. So a lot of people feel like, well, you know, I'm going to just, you know, work on it next day. No, when you're getting paid, the client wants product. They want to see something that's being done. You email them or text them like, well, I'm going to work on this tomorrow. Nope, you got to figure it out. Songwriters in the industry, they're known to be consistent. They're known for, you know, working on the next track, not letting things stop them, especially writer's block, because in my opinion, that's an excuse. You can put your input, leave a comment, tell me how you feel about it. When it comes to writer's block too, sometimes it could be something you're going through that day. It could be emotional. It could be something that just like affect you to the point like you don't even want to finish it. But you should let your emotions speak for itself. Because I know for a fact, when I was talking to Yacey Productions, shout out to Sam and JoJo, I was talking to them. I was actually talking to Sam, and they was on a cruise, and they spent most of the cruise in the cabin just producing. And they told me like this one dope beat they made. I'm trying to remember what the production was, and he told me they made it because it was like a situation that happened at hand. When you use your emotion, it can actually bring your production to the next level. Even an artist too. What you go through, you should write it, or, you know, go in the booth, or even on your phone, use the voice recorder. That's what it's meant for, is to record your voice, right? And a lot of people feel like, well, I can only do that when I'm in the studio. Well, what happens if you don't have access to the studio? Are you going to let it limit yourself to bring the next characteristics, or are you going to do what you need to do to make sure that whatever you're feeling at that moment, when you get to the studio, you have the same energy from what you recorded, right? And that's a big thing for me. A lot of people make excuses, and if you make excuses, that means you're comfortable with just being where you are. Get uncomfortable. Like I said in my last podcast, be uncomfortable and work with it, because you really want to make sure that you can go to the next step in anything you're doing in life, right? That's with writer's block. Make sure that's not your excuse. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So my next thing is a big thing, in my opinion: collabs. Collaborations, whatever you want to call it. Producers, artists, even engineers. Like, sometimes you can't just depend on yourself. You might need help, especially if like there's something off and you're like, man, I wonder what's wrong with this part. Maybe if I send it to this engineer, he could probably fix it. Or, you know, if you're an artist that want to work with another artist that you've been linking with for a while, never make the excuse like, you know, I'll work with them when I can. Take the time now. When you're listening to this podcast or watching this video, take the time, pause it, stop whatever you're doing right now, hit up that artist and hit him up like, hey man, what are you doing? I actually want to set up a session with you probably within 2 weeks, right? I limit myself with 2 weeks because, you know, when you say 1 week, you know, you never know what's going to happen within that time period. So 2 weeks, it gives you a grace period to make sure you can set it up to the point like, okay, I'm going to get with this artist like in 12 days, right? Instead of like, I'm going to get with this artist in 3-4 days. And in 3-4 days, something might happen to the point like, oh man, I got to cancel. But if you got enough time in 2 weeks, you can actually like take the whole week to plan on what y'all going to do next week. So make sure if you're going to work with an artist, make sure everything is organized. If you're going to collab with an artist, make sure you have the track from the producer that you're working with. Limit yourself from using YouTube beats, okay? I know like artists get with producers to recreate a beat. You really want to make something within the session that's going to be beneficial, especially going towards the long run. Or whatever you're using, you own it, right? And make sure that your artist you're working with, keep them on a consistent schedule. Like, okay, let's say if you're recording on the 12th, right? Like you hit up the artist probably on the 3rd or 4th, like, hey man, I want to have you on the session on the 12th, man. Just let me know if you're free, right? And if they say they are, probably on the 9th, the 8th, the 9th, remind them. Even like a couple of days after the 3rd, 4th day, let them know, because what happens, life happens. So you never know what that person on the other side is doing or what they're going through. You want to give them enough time to make sure that you can get what you need to get out to move forward, right? So producers, I believe in co-production all the time, because let's say, okay, for a producer, I know a lot of producers who have unfinished beats, right? I remember I talked to Yacy Production about when it comes to like melodies. So let's say, okay, you're a producer, right? You're good with drum patterns. Another producer is good with instrumentation, right? You need to find out a way that y'all could come to an agreement on, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna send you 3 different sessions of drum patterns. You send me 3 different sessions of instruments, right? So the producer who send the drums to the producer who's good at doing instruments, you know, within 2 to 3 weeks. Matter of fact, it shouldn't even take that long. With producers, I know some producers who can create like 4 to 5 beats in one day. So I would say, you know, to stay consistent, send something in the next 2 to 3 days just to challenge each other. And don't be the person who like, oh man, he sent me like 3, 4 startup beats that are just drums. I'll get to it when I get to it. Take your time to actually listen to it the day of when they send it to you, just so you can get your mindset on, okay, I feel this one. Okay, this is what I can do, right? Because what happens, you start putting yourself in a category on staying consistent, making sure the product is done. Because you being comfortable on not finishing it is taking money out of your pocket. Because what happens as a producer, when you finish the production, right, you can go ahead and put it on BeatStar. You can put it on SoundClick, SoundCloud. You can put it on YouTube and see where it goes from there. As a producer, you never want to be in a category that just feel comfortable with, you know, not getting the product done. You always want to stay consistent. So if you have a planner, plan everything day by day. Like, okay, so he sent me these drums today. Tomorrow, I'm going to work on this one that I like. The same day, you might work on 2. The next day, you might work on the 3rd one. The 4th day, you might send it back to them, seeing how they feel about it. But you don't just want to wait 3, 4, 5 weeks, a month or 2 just to send it to them, and then they're working with someone else and they actually forgot about it. You want it to be to the point where it's still fresh in their mind. You want to surprise the producer, like, oh man, he sent this quick. And then the next thing you know, that producer might know somebody who can actually open the door for you for placements. Because we all, like, if this is your career, you always want to think about placements, royalties. You know, what's going to take you to the next level. Don't feel like just because you got like one good song is going to start from there. I remember when Brian Michael Cox, when I graduated from SAE, he was our speaker. He was talking about the Grammys he won, but he was telling me, you know, after I won a Grammy, I was thinking about what I need to do next, because, you know, the Grammy is every year, right? So just because you won a Grammy 2 years ago, what are you doing right now? That don't mean nothing. Being serious, you know, that's good for your resume that you have Grammys, but what are you doing this year? What are you doing to make, you know, what are you doing for the wave of this year? What are you doing to stay, you know, current with what's going on? Because what happens when you get comfortable, you don't produce. When you don't produce, you don't make money. When you don't make money, you don't make money. So collaboration is a big thing to take you to the next step, because when you work by yourself, it's not easy. But when you actually, I wouldn't say dependent, I would say when you work with someone else that can help you to reach the next step, it's very beneficial. Right now, we're going to talk about Ace Taylor 1. I know him as Taylor. I know him since 2011. Shout out to Taylor, a very dope producer. Off my project I Tried, he produced, I think, two to three of the tracks on my project I Tried in 2013. But even back then, his production was amazing, because one of my favorite one was the track I recorded was Do My Thing. I'm trying to remember if it was High Times 2 that he named it, and then What Do You See was another track on my project, and the production was named Drizzle. I remember I was working with Henry in one room at 882, and then when I was walking to get something to drink, I was actually listening to this production by Taylor called Drizzle, and it was dope because, you know, he was working with Justin Padron in the room too. Shout out to Justin Padron. It was, you know, when you listen to a production and it captures you, you should take advantage of it. You know, ask them their price, ask them about, you know, exclusive, non-exclusive. So the difference from non-exclusive and exclusive. So non-exclusive means that you can pay to use the beat, but you don't have the rights. Either way, non-exclusive or exclusive, producer always have the rights to it because they produced it, right? But you gotta think of it this way. Non-exclusive means like if you buy the beat from them, another artist can buy the same beat from them. If it's not exclusive. Exclusive means that you pay more, but that means another artist can't get the beat. You know, after, you know, understanding, you know, the terminology when it comes to working with a producer, like stems, track outs, waveforms, you know, you gotta think of it this way. You don't want to limit yourself with just being, you know, complacent with being taken advantage of, especially as an artist, because there's producers who will sell you the same beat exclusive and sell it to another artist as exclusive, and then both artists are fighting for the rights to it when they both pay for it, and then the producer puts theirself in the hole. Especially their face card is no value, especially if you're taking advantage of people and their money, right? So you got to think of it this way. So with Ace Taylor, right? Ace Taylor 1, follow him on IG. He also is on beatstar.com/Ace Taylor 1. Some of his credits: Jaron Benton, Trinidad James, Rocco, 24 Hours, Reese LaFleur. His credits are crazy, and I'm just, you know, thankful that I know him to this day. I can hit him on the phone, talk to him about what he got going on. I already know for a fact if I hit him up right now, he'll just tell me I'm working on productions right now. So when it comes to that, you always want to bring yourself around people who can take you to the next step. Never, you know, look at your circle. Look at the people who are around you, right? Look at every individual who you keep in your team. Are they beneficial for you? Are they keeping you back? Are they, you know, taking advantage? I remember Juice WRLD was talking in an interview before he passed away, rest in peace. He was talking about a lot of people he had to cut off because a lot of things changed when he was starting getting like buzz, right? And that's what happens. You really want to stick with day ones who had the same mindset of you, who had the same goal, drive, inspiration, motivation, whatever you want to call it. You want to have people who's going to have you take the next step. And with that being said, I have people around me who encourage me. I have a couple of mentors in my life, financial, music-wise, goal-wise. You know, I have a lot of people in my life who I consider, like I said, mentors, because I know for a fact if there's something I'm confused on, they're going to help me with it, because I really want to take my career to the next step, especially with music, because that's what I love to do. If you love music, there should never be a stop to what you're doing, right? So you got to think of what you got to do to move forward. In my opinion, when it comes to making money, working with artists, you got to think of it this way. You got to, you know, a lot of people will tell you, you know, come out with a YouTube channel, put some of your productions on there, go on BeatStar, go on SoundClick. But the best thing you can do, I say you go to different studios, like in your area, any, like, where, depending on where you live. Like, I live in Georgia, so I know like a lot of different studios in Atlanta. So I be going to a lot of studios, like, you know, camp out, seeing what studios are near your area, link up with different producers, artists, even talk to the studio owners, because with Quality Control, Coach K, Coach K, he managed Migos, Lil Yachty, Lil Baby, and he was talking about he'll bring his producers to a session. It was these group of artists who had a big session, and it was like 2 to 3. No, they had a whole month worth of sessions, right? And he brought his producer there. So the thing you got to think about is, not just social media. You got to make, face to face. You got to talk to people who's actually going to be beneficial to you in the long run. So when it comes to artists, especially Kato on the track, follow him on IG, KATO on the track. He talks about, giving some of your productions for free. A lot of people don't agree with it, but the benefit of that is, long term, you can work with an artist who could be the next big thing. If you have the mindset of doing everything yourself, then how are you going to build? Who are you going to work with, right? So it takes time to make money, especially, as a producer. If you really want to make this long term, what's going to stand you out from everybody else, right? You got to figure out what you got to do, what you got, who you got to work with, who's your team. Management, I really doubt that you really need management at this moment, because what happens when people think about management, they thinking like, oh man, I got to make sure I'm doing everything right now. You should do everything before you get management. On social media, you should DM different artists, like hashtag home studios, recording studios, artists, look at the location around you, and just, DM them saying, like, check out my beats. If you like it, let me know. Give me your opinion. If there's any you want to buy, let me know. And that's a big thing. Like with me, when it comes to my podcast, because, I link up with a lot of different people day by day. I always tell people about my podcast. If you're a producer, tell everybody you're a producer. Anytime you're in the studio, anytime you're out. Matter of fact, the best thing you could do each week, go to a venue that deals with your profession, and just link up with different people that way. And that'll actually help you to take the next step to move further. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the podcast, listening on YouTube. Thank you for everybody live on IG. And, from everybody from Rebel Ears, I want to say thank you for listening, and keep tuning in.